Security! This woman stole someone's ticket! Jessica Martinez smirked as she deliberately poured steaming coffee down Zara Williams' white hoodie. The liquid cascaded over Zara's chest, pooling in her lap. Jessica then flicked wet napkins at Zara's face one by one, each piece landing with calculated precision. "Clean yourself up." Jessica's manicured finger jabbed inches from Zara's nose. "You're embarrassing the real passengers." Phones snapped up across the cabin. 12 cameras locked onto the humiliation. Red recording dots pulsed like warning lights. Zara sat perfectly still, coffee dripping from her sleeves onto the pristine leather seat. The $50 million private jet hummed around them, but nobody knew the most important detail yet. Have you ever been judged so completely wrong that the truth would shatter everything they thought they knew about power? "Security! This woman stole someone's ticket!" Jessica's voice carried across the cabin like a fire alarm. She snatched Zara's boarding pass from the seat pocket, waving it above her head like evidence at a trial. "I don't know how you got this, but executives don't dress like that." Her eyes swept over Zara's simple jeans and coffee-stained hoodie with theatrical disgust. Other passengers shifted in their leather seats, phones still recording. The tension was electric. Tommy Chen, seated 3 rows back, angled his phone toward the confrontation. His live stream counter climbed, 50,000 viewers and rising. "Y'all seeing this?" he whispered to his followers. "Flight attendant totally profiling this woman on a private jet." Jessica blocked the aisle with her body, arms crossed like a prison guard. "I've worked corporate aviation for 14 months. I know who belongs here." She pressed the intercom button. "Captain Rodriguez to first class. We have a situation." The pilot emerged from the cockpit, his uniform crisp and authoritative. "What's the problem, Jessica?" "This passenger." Jessica pointed at Zara like she was identifying a suspect. "Has a seat 1, a boarding pass, but clearly doesn't have the credentials for VIP service." Captain Rodriguez studied the boarding pass Jessica thrust at him, his brow furrowed. "The manifest shows Z. Williams, VIP, owner authorization." "Exactly." Jessica's voice pitched higher. "She's using someone else's identity. Look at her." 10 minutes until takeoff. 10 minutes to resolve this situation. The intercom crackled with ground control updates. Outside the windows, ground crew moved with practiced efficiency, unaware of the drama unfolding inside the cabin. Zara's phone buzzed against her leg. Multiple missed calls lit up the screen. "Board meeting, urgent," flashed repeatedly. She silenced it without looking up. "Ma'am," Captain Rodriguez addressed Zara directly, "I need to see your identification." Zara reached slowly into her carry-on bag. As she lifted the flap, Jessica caught a glimpse of a leather portfolio inside. Expensive-looking, with what appeared to be a corporate seal embossed on the cover, but Jessica was too focused on her performance to notice. "Here." Zara handed over her driver's license with the same calm she'd maintained throughout the entire encounter. Rodriguez examined it carefully. "Zara Williams, age 32. He compared it to the boarding pass. "Everything appears to match." Jessica's face reddened. "IDs can be faked. This is identity theft." She turned to address the cabin full of witnesses. "I'm protecting all of you from fraud." Tommy's live stream exploded with comments. The viewer count hit 200,000. #JetGate scandal began trending across social platforms. Comments flooded the feed. "This is so wrong! Sue them all! Plot twist incoming!" Corporate manager Blake Harrison, seated in 3B, quietly documented everything on his tablet. As Williams Aviation's senior operations director, he recognized the potential liability unfolding before his eyes. His fingers moved quickly across the screen, creating an incident report in real time. 7 minutes to takeoff. Jessica pressed her advantage. "I'm calling airport security." She grabbed the cabin phone with dramatic flair. "We cannot allow this jet to depart with an unauthorized passenger." "Jessica," Captain Rodriguez said carefully. The documentation appears legitimate. Appears? Jessica cut him off. Captain, with all due respect, I interact with our VIP clients daily. They arrive in town cars wearing business suits, carrying briefcases. She gestured at Zara's casual attire. They don't show up looking like they're headed to a basketball game. The words hung in the air like poison. Several passengers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Tommy's live stream chat erupted with angry emojis and outraged comments. Zara finally spoke, her voice steady and measured. Jessica, I understand your position completely. Please continue with your standard security protocol. Something in her tone made Captain Rodriguez pause. There was no panic, no defensiveness, just quiet confidence that seemed oddly out of place for someone being accused of fraud. 5 minutes to take off. Security Chief Martinez appeared at the jet's entrance, his radio crackling with ground control chatter. He was a large man with 20 years of airport experience, and he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Someone called about unauthorized boarding? Martinez's voice carried the weariness of a man who'd seen every possible airport drama. Jessica practically bounced on her toes. Yes. This woman is using stolen credentials to access our executive aircraft. Martinez studied the scene. The calm black woman in casual clothes, the agitated flight attendant, the crowd of filming passengers. His experienced eye caught details others missed. Zara's posture, her lack of nervous fidgeting, the way she held eye contact without challenge or submission. Ma'am, I'll need to ask you some questions, Martinez said to Zara. Of course. Zara's phone buzzed again. This time, Martinez caught a glimpse of the screen. Multiple calls from what appeared to be corporate numbers. Board meetings, executive assistants. The kind of call volume that suggested someone important was missing from somewhere important. 3 minutes to take off. Jessica staged her final performance. This woman is clearly using stolen identity documents to fraud her way onto a private corporate jet. Real executives don't dress like homeless people. The words spilled out with increasing venom. I refuse to serve someone who's probably planning to rob the other passengers. The cabin fell silent except for the hum of engines and the soft clicking of phone cameras. Tommy's live stream had hit 500,000 viewers. The hashtag was trending nationally. Zara looked up at Jessica with something that might have been pity. Jessica, you're absolutely right about one thing, she said quietly. Real executives should definitely be held to the highest standards. Her phone rang again. This time she answered. The phone's speaker crackled to life, filling the cabin with a crisp, professional voice. Good morning, Miss Williams. Your 2 p.m. board meeting is confirmed with the entire executive committee. Should I prepare the quarterly revenue reports? Jessica's mouth opened, then snapped shut. Her confident smirk wavered for just a moment before returning full force. Anyone can fake phone calls, she announced loudly, playing to her audience of recording passengers. Voice apps, pre-recorded messages, it's all over social media. Security Chief Martinez stepped closer, his radio buzzing with updates from ground control. The jet was cleared for departure, but the passenger situation remained unresolved. 7 minutes to take off. Tommy's live stream counter hit 800,000 viewers. The comments section moved so fast it was unreadable, a blur of outrage, speculation, and emoji reactions. Major news outlets had begun picking up the hashtag. #JetGate scandal was trending in 12 countries. Thank you, Sarah, Zara said into the phone, her voice carrying clearly through the cabin. Please reschedule the Goldman Sachs presentation to 3 p.m. And Sarah, I need you to pull the Employee Handbook, Section 4.7, forward it to legal immediately. She ended the call and looked up at the circle of authority figures surrounding her. Captain Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. Martinez's experienced eyes narrowed. Something about this woman's demeanor didn't match the profile of someone caught in a fraud. Jessica, however, doubled down. Section 4.7 ? Goldman Sachs? She laughed shrilly. Lady, you've been watching too many movies. Real CEOs don't fly around in hoodies making fake business calls. Corporate manager Blake Harrison looked up from his tablet where he'd been frantically researching. His face had gone pale. He'd found something that made his hands tremble as he typed. 5 minutes to takeoff. Ground crew supervisor Janet Walsh climbed the mobile stairs, called up by Martinez to assist with the unauthorized passenger removal. She carried zip-tie restraints and a portable security scanner. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us," Walsh announced, her voice echoing the authority of someone who'd removed countless disruptive passengers. The cabin filled with the soft sounds of a dozen phones capturing every moment. Tommy narrated breathlessly to his million-plus viewers. "They're about to arrest her, y'all. This is insane." Zara remained seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap. "I understand you have protocols to follow. However, before you proceed, I'd like Captain Rodriguez to confirm the aircraft registration number." "The registration?" Rodriguez looked confused. "This is N847WA. "And the ownership?" Rodriguez consulted his flight manifest tablet. "This aircraft is owned by—" His voice faltered. His eyes darted between the screen and Zara's face. Jessica stepped forward impatiently. "Owned by Williams Aviation Corporation, which is exactly why this fraud needs to stop." She grabbed Walsh's arm. "Remove her. Now." 3 minutes to takeoff. The tension reached its breaking point. Martinez positioned himself at Zara's left, Walsh at her right. Jessica stood triumphant in the aisle, blocking any escape route. Captain Rodriguez stared at his tablet screen like it contained a bomb's detonation code. Blake Harrison suddenly stood up, his face sheet white. "Wait," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Every camera in the cabin swung toward him. Tommy's livestream viewers sensed something massive approaching. The comment feed exploded with anticipation. "I said wait!" Blake's voice cracked with urgency. Jessica whirled around. "Blake, this doesn't concern operations management. This is a security issue." "Jessica?" Blake's tablet shook in his hands. "I've been researching Williams Aviation's executive structure." He swallowed hard. The chairman and CEO is listed as Z. Williams. A ripple of murmurs swept through the cabin. Jessica's confident expression flickered. "So what? It's obviously identity theft." Blake looked directly at Zara, his face filled with growing horror at what his colleague had done. "The chairman and CEO," he continued, his voice getting stronger, "is Zara Williams, age 32, African-American female." He held up his tablet, showing a corporate headshot. "And she's been running the company for 3 years. The cabin fell into absolute silence. Even Tommy's live stream commentary stopped dead. Jessica stared at the tablet screen, her face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and dawning panic. That can't be right. She gestured wildly at Zara's casual attire. "Look at her." 1 minute to take off. Martinez slowly stepped back from Zara. Walsh's zip-tie restraints hung forgotten at her side. Captain Rodriguez removed his hat entirely, running his hands through his hair. The only sound was the soft hum of engines and the distant chatter of Tommy's live stream, which had somehow reached 1.5 million viewers and was still climbing. Zara stood up slowly, smoothing down her coffee-stained hoodie. She reached into her carry-on bag and withdrew the leather portfolio Blake had glimpsed earlier. The corporate seal was clearly visible now, the Williams Aviation logo embossed in gold. She opened it with deliberate care. Inside were official documents, corporate letterhead, and what appeared to be board resolutions bearing multiple executive signatures. At the top of the stack was a laminated ID badge, Zara Williams, Chairman, CEO, Williams Aviation Corporation. She held it up so every camera could capture it clearly. "This is my aircraft," she said quietly, her voice carrying absolute authority for the first time. "This is my company, and Jessica, She looked directly at the flight attendant who had now gone completely pale. "You work for me." Jessica's legs wobbled. She grabbed the nearest seat back for support. "In exactly 90 seconds," Zara continued, consulting her phone, "you're going to understand what that means. Sarah." She speed-dialed again, this time on speaker. "Yes, Miss Williams? Connect me to legal. And Sarah? Pull Jessica Martinez's employment file. Employee ID 4472. I need her complete record reviewed immediately." The phone connected with another click. "Williams Aviation Legal Department, this is David Chen speaking." Every person in that cabin, passengers, crew, security, stared at Zara Williams as she prepared to demonstrate exactly what corporate power looked like when it stopped pretending to be powerless. "David, I need you to reference Section 4.7 of our employee handbook regarding discriminatory conduct," Zara said into the speakerphone, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed. The legal department's response crackled through the cabin speakers. Section 4.7 states that discrimination based on race, appearance, or assumed economic status results in immediate suspension pending investigation with potential termination for cause. Jessica's face drained of all color. She stumbled backward, nearly colliding with Security Chief Martinez, who was now staring at Zara with the expression of a man who'd just realized he'd been about to arrest his own boss's boss. Tommy's live stream had exploded past 2 million viewers. The comment feed was a waterfall of fire emojis, shocked faces, and predictions of corporate lawsuits. News outlets were scrambling to confirm the story breaking in real time. Furthermore, the lawyer's voice continued through the speakers, any incident involving potential discrimination must be immediately documented and reviewed by the executive committee within 24 hours. Captain Rodriguez slowly placed his hat back on his head, then immediately removed it again, clearly struggling with how to address someone he'd just discovered was technically his ultimate superior. Zara closed the legal call and turned to face the cabin full of witnesses. Every phone camera was locked on her face. The quiet woman in the coffee-stained hoodie had transformed into something else entirely, not through costume or theatrics, but through the simple revelation of truth. "Blake," she addressed the corporate manager directly, "please confirm Williams Aviation's current operational status." Blake's hands trembled as he consulted his tablet. Williams Aviation Corporation operates 487 aircraft across 6 countries. Annual revenue, $2.8 billion. Total employees, 12,000. He swallowed hard. Stock price, as of market open, $247 per share. The numbers landed in the cabin like physical blows. This wasn't just about a flight attendant's mistake anymore. This was about a multi-billion-dollar corporation whose CEO had just been publicly humiliated by her own employee. Jessica tried to speak, but only a strangled sound emerged. She looked around desperately, as if searching for an exit that didn't exist at 30,000 feet of altitude, except they were still on the ground, trapped in this airborne courtroom. "Jessica Martinez," Zara continued, consulting her phone where Sarah had apparently sent the employment file. "Hired 14 months ago. Previous employment, 3 years at Atlantic Charter Services, terminated for customer service violations." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jessica's carefully constructed authority crumbled in real time, captured by a dozen cameras and broadcast to millions of viewers. "No," Jessica whispered, then louder, "No, this is impossible. You can't be." She gestured frantically at Zara's casual attire. "CEOs wear suits. They have assistants. They don't fly alone in hoodies." Zara's expression remained perfectly calm. "Jessica, you've made several assumptions today. Let me address them systematically." She retrieved her phone and began reading from what appeared to be a prepared statement. Except it was clearly being composed in real time, her fingers moving across the screen as she spoke. "First, you assumed my economic status based on my clothing. Second, You assumed my professional credentials based on my appearance. Third, you assumed my race made me an inherently less credible passenger than others on this aircraft. Each point landed like a prosecutor's closing argument. Tommy's livestream viewers were going absolutely insane. The comment feed was now completely unreadable, just a blur of reactions to what was becoming the most viral corporate accountability moment in aviation history. But here's what you didn't assume, Zara continued, her voice gaining strength. You didn't assume that a black woman could own the company whose uniform you're wearing. You didn't assume that someone in casual clothes could sign your paychecks. And you certainly didn't assume that your actions were being broadcast live to 2.3 million viewers. Security Chief Martinez had backed completely away from the confrontation, his radio silent. Ground Crew Supervisor Walsh stood frozen with her zip-tie restraints, clearly wishing she'd called in sick. Captain Rodriguez looked like a man watching his career flash before his eyes. Jessica's desperation reached its peak. This has to be fake. Some kind of setup. She turned to the passengers, pleading, "You all saw her. Does she look like a CEO to you?" The question hung in the cabin like a challenge. Several passengers exchanged uncomfortable glances, forced to confront their own unconscious biases in real time. "Actually," said an older white man in seat 2A, his voice cutting through the tension, "she looks exactly like a CEO should look. Calm under pressure, articulate, and completely in control of the situation." Other passengers nodded agreement. The tide had turned completely. Zara opened her portfolio and withdrew a thick document bound in Williams Aviation letterhead. "Jessica, this is the company's quarterly board report. Would you like me to read the section about customer service excellence and our zero-tolerance policy for discrimination?" "Please don't," Jessica whispered, finally understanding the magnitude of her situation. "Or perhaps," Zara continued, "you'd prefer I discuss our recent acquisition of Atlantic Charter Services, your former employer, and why we specifically improved their customer service standards after purchase." Jessica's legs gave out entirely. She collapsed into the nearest empty seat, her head in her hands. Blake Harrison cleared his throat nervously. "Miss Williams, on behalf of Williams Aviation's operations management, I want to formally apologize for this incident and assure you that immediate corrective action will be taken." Zara nodded acknowledgement, then addressed the cabin at large. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've witnessed something important today. Not just discrimination, but the power of documentation and accountability." She gestured toward the dozens of recording phones. Thanks to social media and citizen journalism, what used to happen in private, with no witnesses and no consequences, now happens in full view of the world. Tommy's live stream had reached 3 million viewers. #JetGate scandal was trending globally. Major news networks were already preparing special reports. "Jessica," Zara said finally, her voice returning to its earlier calm, "you have a choice to make. You can accept responsibility for your actions and participate in our company's corrective process. Or you can continue denying reality while millions of people watch you do it." Jessica looked up from her hands, mascara streaked down her cheeks. For the first time since the incident began, she seemed to see Zara clearly, not as a threat to be eliminated, but as a person she had deeply wronged. Jessica's voice cracked. "I don't know what to say." "Start with the truth," Zara replied. "It's simpler than you think." The engines continued their steady hum, but the real power in the cabin had shifted completely. The quiet woman in the hoodie had revealed herself to be exactly who she'd always been, someone with the authority to change everything, who had chosen to use that authority as a teaching moment rather than a weapon. But the lesson wasn't over yet. "The truth," Zara repeated, standing in the center of the cabin like a judge delivering a verdict. "Let's start with facts, Jessica. Quantifiable, legal facts." She opened her phone and began reading data with the precision of someone who lived in boardrooms and quarterly reports. Williams Aviation Corporation, founded 1987, privately held until our IPO 3 years ago. Current market capitalization, $14.2 billion. We employ 12,047 people across 6 countries, operate 487 aircraft, and maintain contracts with 847 corporate clients. Each number landed with increasing weight. The passengers, many of whom were clearly business executives themselves, understood exactly what these figures meant. This wasn't just a customer service dispute anymore. This was a corporate crisis unfolding in real time. Tommy's Livestream viewers had climbed past 4 million. The comment feed was a constant stream of fire emojis, stock ticker symbols, and predictions about tomorrow's market impact. #Jetgate scandal was trending in 23 countries. Jessica Martinez, Zara continued, consulting her phone where the HR file had been forwarded. Employee ID 4472, hired February 15, 2024. Starting salary, $67,000 annually, plus benefits package valued at $23,000. Total company investment in your employment, $90,000 per year. Jessica's face was buried in her hands, but the numbers continued relentlessly. Your performance reviews show 3 customer service warnings in your first 6 months, 2 complaints regarding inappropriate assumptions about passenger credentials, 1 formal reprimand for failure to follow non-discrimination protocols. Blake Harrison winced visibly. As corporate operations manager, those performance issues would have crossed his desk. His own liability was becoming apparent. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, his voice carefully respectful. "Miss Williams, I apologize profusely for not recognizing the situation immediately. How would you like us to proceed?" Zara closed her phone and looked directly at Jessica, who was still collapsed in the passenger seat. "Jessica, look at me." Slowly, Jessica raised her head. Her makeup was completely destroyed, her professional facade in ruins. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman who had made a catastrophic error in judgment and was about to face its consequences. "You have exactly 2 minutes to make a choice," Zara said, her voice carrying the absolute authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Option 1, immediate suspension without pay, pending a full investigation, mandatory diversity training, public apology. Probationary employment status for 12 months, during which any similar incident results in immediate termination. She paused, letting the severity sink in. Option 2, termination with cause, forfeiture of all benefits, legal review for potential discrimination lawsuit, both personal and corporate. And Jessica? Zara's voice dropped to almost a whisper. When I say legal review, I mean our legal department consists of 17 attorneys from 3 of the most prestigious firms in corporate law. The cabin was absolutely silent, except for the soft sounds of phones recording and Tommy's breathless narration to his millions of viewers. Furthermore, Zara continued, this incident is now documented by multiple independent sources, 12 passenger videos, cabin security footage, and a live stream with 4.2 million current viewers. The evidence is overwhelming and legally admissible. Security Chief Martinez shifted uncomfortably. His 20 years of airport experience had never prepared him for witnessing a corporate execution conducted with such calm precision. The potential financial impact extends beyond your employment, Zara stated, pulling up what appeared to be legal documents on her phone. A discrimination lawsuit could cost Williams Aviation between $2, $5 million in settlement fees, legal costs, and punitive damages. Our stock price has already dropped 2.8% since this incident began trending. Blake Harrison frantically checked his own phone. The stock information was accurate. Williams Aviation was indeed dropping in pre-market trading as news of the incident spread across social media and financial news outlets. Additionally, Zara continued with the methodical thoroughness of someone delivering a corporate presentation, the Federal Aviation Administration takes discrimination in aviation services extremely seriously. This incident could trigger a formal investigation into our company's compliance with federal anti-discrimination statutes. Jessica finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. What do you want from me? I want you to understand the full scope of what happened here today, Zara replied. You didn't just insult a passenger, you didn't just embarrass yourself. You created a liability situation that could potentially cost this company millions of dollars and thousands of jobs. She gestured toward the cabin full of recording devices. You did all of this in front of the largest live audience in aviation discrimination history. The legal precedent you've potentially created will be studied in corporate law schools for decades. Tommy's live stream had reached 5 million viewers. Major news networks were now carrying the story live. #Jetgate scandal was trending globally alongside #corporate accountability and #Williams Aviation. However, Zara said, her tone shifting slightly, this also presents an opportunity. Jessica looked up with the desperate hope of someone drowning who'd spotted a life preserver. Williams Aviation can use this incident to demonstrate our commitment to genuine corporate responsibility. We can implement industry-leading anti-discrimination protocols. We can become the standard other aviation companies aspire to meet. She pulled up another document on her phone. I'm prepared to announce a $2.5 million investment in comprehensive bias training for all customer-facing employees across our entire fleet. Real training, not symbolic gestures. Blake Harrison nodded vigorously, clearly seeing the PR recovery potential. Additionally, we'll implement a real-time passenger verification system that prevents profiling based on appearance, anonymous reporting mechanisms for discrimination incidents, quarterly third-party audits of our service equality metrics. The corporate machinery was already in motion. Zara was transforming a crisis into a competitive advantage with the skill of someone who'd built a multi-billion-dollar company. But Jessica, she continued, returning her focus to the flight attendant, all of this requires acknowledgement of what actually happened here. Not excuses, not justifications, not claims about fake phone calls or stolen identities. Jessica nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. I need to hear you say it, Zara stated firmly. Not for my benefit, but for the 5.3 million people currently watching this live stream. What did you do and why was it wrong? The cabin held its breath. Even Tommy's commentary stopped. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The reckoning that would determine whether this incident became a cautionary tale about consequences or a redemption story about learning from mistakes. Jessica took a shuddering breath and looked directly into the nearest camera. I discriminated against Miss Williams based on her race and appearance. I made assumptions about her economic status and professional credentials without any evidence. I refused to treat her with the basic respect every passenger deserves. Her voice grew stronger. I was completely wrong, and I take full responsibility for my actions. Zara nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement rather than forgiveness. That's a beginning, Jessica. But understanding what you did wrong is only the first step. The real question is, what are you going to do differently? The corporate showdown had reached its conclusion, but the real work of change was just beginning. What I'm going to do differently, Zara said, addressing not just Jessica, but the millions of viewers watching the live stream, is ensure this never happens again to anyone, anywhere in our industry. She opened a new application on her phone, what appeared to be a corporate announcement system. Sarah, are you still on the line? Ooh. Yes, Miss Williams. Legal, HR, and public relations are all standing by. Excellent. Please execute Emergency Protocol 7. Full corporate response team activation. I want a press conference scheduled for 6 p.m. Eastern, and I want our entire executive committee assembled for emergency session at 4 p.m. Tommy's livestream viewers watched in real time as a multi-billion-dollar corporation pivoted into crisis management mode. The viewer count had stabilized at 6.2 million, making this the most watched corporate accountability moment in social media history. Jessica, Zara continued, here's what's going to happen. You're suspended effective immediately. Not terminated, suspended. You'll spend the next 6 weeks in intensive diversity and unconscious bias training with Dr. Angela Davis Morrison, one of the country's leading experts in workplace discrimination. Jessica looked up with something approaching hope. During your suspension, you'll also participate in our new ambassador program. You'll work directly with civil rights organizations to understand the real-world impact of discrimination, not as punishment, but as education. Blake Harrison was frantically taking notes on his tablet, clearly tasked with implementing these new policies in real time. When you return to active duty, Zara stated, it will be with a full understanding of why this incident was so damaging and with the tools to ensure it never happens again. You'll also be required to participate in monthly bias recognition workshops for the next 12 months. The corporate machinery was moving with impressive speed. Zara's phone buzzed with constant updates from her executive team, each implementing different aspects of the company's response. But Jessica's individual situation is just one piece of a much larger puzzle, Zara announced, turning to address the cabin full of cameras. Ladies and gentlemen, you're witnessing the birth of the Williams Aviation Equality Initiative. She began reading from what appeared to be a prepared corporate document, except she was clearly composing it in real time, her responses shaped by the events of the past hour. Effective today, Williams Aviation is committing $5 million annually to comprehensive anti-discrimination training for all 12,000 employees. Not symbolic training sessions, but intensive, ongoing education programs developed in partnership with leading civil rights organizations. The numbers were staggering. This wasn't corporate damage control. This was genuine systematic change backed by serious financial investment. Second, we're implementing the industry's first real-time passenger verification system. No more assumptions based on appearance, clothing, or perceived economic status. Every passenger interaction will be logged, tracked, and reviewed for potential bias. Captain Rodriguez nodded approvingly. As a pilot, he understood the value of systematic protocols over human judgment in high-stakes situations. Third, we're establishing an anonymous reporting system for discrimination incidents, managed by an independent third-party organization. Employees and passengers will have a direct channel to report bias without fear of retaliation. Blake Harrison was now live-streaming his own tablet screen, showing the corporate policy documents being created and implemented in real time. The transparency was unprecedented in corporate crisis management. Fourth, quarterly audits by external civil rights experts. Not internal reviews, but independent assessments of our actual performance metrics regarding service equality. Security Chief Martinez, who had remained silent throughout the showdown, finally spoke up. Ms. Williams, this level of accountability is exactly what the aviation industry needs. I've seen too many incidents like this get swept under the rug. That's precisely why we're making everything public, Zara replied. Accountability only works when it's visible. She turned back to Jessica, who had been quietly listening to the corporate transformation unfolding around her actions. Jessica, you have a choice to make. You can be part of this solution, or you can remain part of the problem. The training I'm offering you isn't punishment. It's an opportunity to become an advocate for change within your own industry. Jessica nodded slowly, finally understanding the magnitude of what was being offered to her. I want to be part of the solution. I want to learn. Then you'll start Monday morning with Dr. Davis Morrison's team. Blake will coordinate your schedule. The corporate response was moving beyond crisis management into genuine transformation. Tommy's live stream viewers were witnessing something unprecedented. Real-time corporate evolution driven by social media accountability. For our viewers, Zara said, looking directly into Tommy's camera, this incident demonstrates something crucial about power in the modern era. 20 years ago, Jessica's actions would have had no consequences. One person's word against another's, no witnesses, no accountability. She gestured toward the dozen phones recording everything. Today, discrimination happens in full view of millions of people. Corporate accountability is no longer optional. It's demanded by consumers, enforced by social media, and measured in real-time stock prices. The stock ticker on Blake's tablet showed Williams Aviation had recovered most of its earlier losses as news of the company's comprehensive response spread across financial networks. But accountability without education is just punishment, Zara continued. Real change requires understanding why bias exists, how it operates, and what systematic solutions actually work. She opened another document on her phone. That's why Williams Aviation is also establishing the Corporate Bias Research Institute. We're partnering with 3 major universities to study discrimination in service industries and develop evidence-based solutions. The initiative was breathtaking in its scope. This wasn't just about fixing one incident, it was about transforming an entire industry's approach to equality and service. Jessica will be our first Research Institute participant, Zara announced. Her experience, both her mistakes and her learning process, will become a case study for other companies facing similar challenges. Jessica looked up with something approaching gratitude. She was being offered the chance to transform her worst mistake into a tool for helping others avoid the same errors. Finally, Zara said, I want to address something directly to our 6.5 million viewers. Change doesn't happen because people suddenly become perfect. Change happens because systems make discrimination costly and equality profitable. She closed her phone and looked around the cabin one final time. Today, discrimination cost one employee her job security, cost our company millions in market value, and cost our industry its reputation for fairness. But it also created an opportunity to build something better. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. Ms. Williams, on behalf of the entire flight crew, I want to formally apologize and commit to making Williams Aviation the industry leader in equality and respect. Accepted, Captain. Now, I believe we have a flight to catch. And Jessica? Zara turned to the suspended flight attendant. Your first assignment is to write a detailed account of today's events. Not for HR, not for legal, but for the training program. Other employees need to understand exactly how bias operates and what it costs. Jessica nodded, finally understanding that her humiliation could become education, her mistake could become prevention, and her learning could become other people's growth. The corporate showdown was over. The real work of systematic change was just beginning. 6 months later, Williams Aviation's quarterly diversity report showed results that transformed the entire aviation industry. Employee satisfaction had increased by 34%. Customer service complaints regarding discrimination had dropped to 0. The company's stock price had reached an all-time high, driven partly by what financial analysts called the ESG premium, the market value added by genuine environmental, social, and governance leadership. Jessica Martinez stood in front of 200 Williams Aviation employees at the company's new Bias Recognition Training Center. She wore her flight attendant uniform with quiet pride, but something fundamental had changed in her demeanor. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had learned from devastating mistakes. 6 months ago, I nearly destroyed a passenger's dignity based on assumptions I didn't even realize I was making, Jessica told the training group. I want to share with you exactly how unconscious bias operates, because understanding it is the only way to prevent it. The training center itself was a testament to corporate transformation. Built with $2.3 million from the Williams Aviation Equality Initiative, it featured state-of-the-art simulation technology, real-time bias measurement tools, and partnerships with leading civil rights organizations. Dr. Angela Davis Morrison, the country's leading expert in workplace discrimination, had become Williams Aviation's Chief Equality Officer. Her research, funded by the Corporate Bias Research Institute, was being adopted by companies across multiple industries. The most dangerous aspect of bias, Dr. Davis Morrison explained to a new group of trainees, is that good people can cause tremendous harm without malicious intent. Jessica's case study demonstrates how assumptions based on appearance can escalate into corporate crises within minutes. Tommy Chen, whose live stream had captured the original incident, had become an unexpected advocate for corporate accountability. His follow-up videos tracking Williams Aviation's transformation had garnered over 50 million views combined. #JetGate scandal had evolved into #corporate changeworks. What makes this story powerful, Tommy told his 2.8 million followers in a recent video, isn't just that discrimination was exposed, it's that real systematic change followed. Other companies are literally copying Williams Aviation's playbook. The ripple effects extended far beyond aviation. 17 major corporations had implemented similar bias recognition programs. 3 universities had established corporate equality research departments. The Federal Aviation Administration had adopted Williams Aviation's passenger verification system as recommended industry standard. But the most profound change was in Jessica herself. "I learned that apologizing isn't enough," she explained to a group of new employees during their orientation. "Acknowledgement without action is just performance. Real change requires understanding why bias exists and building systems to prevent it." Her transformation had become legendary within the company. From suspended employee to leading bias prevention educator, Jessica's journey demonstrated that redemption was possible through genuine learning and systematic change. Zara Williams watched the training session from the back of the room, her presence barely noticed by the participants. She still dressed simply, today in dark jeans and a Williams Aviation polo shirt. But her quiet authority was unmistakable to anyone who knew what to look for. The most important lesson from that day, Zara reflected during a recent interview with Harvard Business Review, wasn't about individual prejudice. It was about the power of transparency and accountability in driving systematic change. Williams Aviation's transformation had become a Harvard Business School case study taught in corporate responsibility programs worldwide. The company's stock performance, employee satisfaction metrics, and customer service excellence had established new benchmarks for values-driven corporate leadership. "We didn't change because we suddenly became perfect people," Zara explained to the interviewer. "We changed because we created systems that made equality profitable and discrimination costly." The Corporate Bias Research Institute had published 17 peer-reviewed studies on unconscious bias in service industries. Their findings were being used by companies, universities, and government agencies to develop evidence-based anti-discrimination policies. Jessica's personal story had become central to the Institute's research. Her detailed documentation of how bias operates in real-time situations provided unprecedented insight into the psychological mechanisms of discrimination. The most surprising discovery, Dr. Davis Morrison noted in the Institute's annual report, was how quickly systematic change can occur when it's supported by genuine leadership commitment and transparent accountability. Other industries were taking notice. Hotels, restaurants, retail chains, and healthcare systems had begun implementing Williams Aviation's bias recognition protocols. The company's equality metrics had become industry gold standard. Tommy's original live stream had been viewed over 100 million times across all platforms. But more importantly, it had sparked a movement toward corporate accountability that extended far beyond social media viral moments. "Real change happens when people realize they're being watched," Tommy observed in his anniversary retrospective video. "Not just by customers, but by history. These stories become part of how we measure progress." The anniversary of #JetGate scandal had become an unofficial corporate accountability day, with companies sharing their diversity metrics, bias prevention initiatives, and systematic equality improvements. Jessica's annual presentation to new Williams Aviation employees had become the company's most requested training session. Her honest reflection on prejudice, learning, and redemption resonated with employees across all demographic groups. "The most important thing I learned," Jessica concluded her latest presentation, "is that good intentions aren't enough. Systematic change requires systematic solutions. Individual awareness plus corporate commitment plus public accountability equals real progress." Zara nodded approvingly from the back of the room. The quiet woman in simple clothes had used her corporate authority to create lasting change that extended far beyond her own company. These black stories, these life stories, these touching stories of transformation, Zara reflected, remind us that real-life stories have power when they're connected to systematic solutions. The Williams Aviation model had proven that corporate accountability could drive genuine social progress. Other companies were discovering that values-driven leadership created competitive advantages in talent recruitment, customer loyalty, and market performance. But the most powerful legacy was the simplest. Discrimination had consequences, learning had value, and systematic change was possible when leadership chose justice over convenience. Have you witnessed discrimination in your workplace, in transportation, in retail environments? Share your experiences in the comments below. When we document these real-life stories, we create the evidence needed for systematic change. What would you have done in Zara's position? How can we support companies that choose accountability over defensiveness? Share this video if you believe in the power of quiet leadership and systematic solutions. Subscribe for more touching stories of how individual courage creates institutional change. Because these stories matter. And your voice in demanding corporate accountability matters too.